What's up, everybody? Nick Dwyer back for the 10th inning with another edition of This Day in Sports History. In yesterday's edition, we saw David Cone, pitcher for the New York Yankees, throw a perfect game in 1999, good for the 16th in MLB history. We don't have any perfect games to talk about today, but we do have some Wimbledons to talk about, we have some Tour de France's to talk about, and we have baseball's first unassisted triple play occur. So if y'all enjoy this video, leave a like on it. If you're new to the channel, want to see more, hit that subscribe button. Let's get into it. This Day in Sports History. We started today in 1877 at the inaugural Wimbledon event. On the men's side, Spencer Gore would win the first ever event, defeating William Marshall 6-1, 6-2, 6-4 to claim his only major. 7 years later, we have another first in Wimbledon. This time, it would be the first time we would see a women's competition. And in the final, Maud Watson would become the inaugural female champion, defeating her own sister, Lillian Watson, 6-8, 6-3, 6-3, to win her first of two straight Wimbledons and two majors. Then we move to the Olympics in 1900. In the marathon, Mikel Teato would win the marathon with a time of 2 hours, 59 minutes and 45 seconds. Very slow by today's standards, but he won by about 6 minutes. 3 years later in 1903, we have another inaugural event, this time in the Tour de France. Maurice Guerin would win the inaugural event. However, in 1904, Guerin was found out to have caught a train for part of the race and ended up being disqualified, so his victory doesn't count. Honestly, I laughed when I saw that. It's pretty funny. How do you not catch someone catching a train? But either way, it was settled, so he is not the champion. There's no champion for that year. Staying with first, we move up to 1909, and in Major League Baseball, Cleveland shortstop Neil Ball would execute the first unassisted triple play in Major League Baseball history. We stay with the Indians, but move up 1 year later to 1910. Indians pitcher Cy Young would register his 500th career victory in a win against the Washington Senators 5-4 after 11 innings. Young would end up getting 11 more wins in his career, giving him 511 for his career. That's 94 more victories than the next closest at Walter Johnson. Speaking of Johnson, we go to his team in 1915. The Washington Senators would steal 8 bases in 1 inning in a game against the Indians off of catcher Steve O'Neill. This would set a major league record for stolen bases in 1 inning. We stick with baseball. 5 years later in 1920, Babe Ruth, with the first of 2 home runs on the day at Polo Grounds, would become the first major league player to hit 30 home runs in one season. This home run came off Dickie Kerr and would break his own major league record of 29, and he would go on to hit many more in his career, shatter that 30 mark. 2 years later in 1922, we have another first, this time in swimming. Johnny Weissmuller became the first person to break the 1-minute barrier for the 100-meter freestyle, swimming it in 58.6 seconds. He would later go on to break his own record 2 years later and hold that one until 1934. We moved in 1925 back to the Tour de France, and Ottavio Borraccia would win his second of 2 Tour titles and his second straight. We moved to golf in 1930 at the LPGA Western Open. Lucia Mita would win her only major, defeating June Beebe 6-5 to win the inaugural event and the first ever women's major championship. We move back to Major League Baseball in 1933, and we have another first. The first time in Major League Baseball history that 2 brothers on opposite teams would hit home runs in the same game. Rick Farrell on the Red Sox and Wes Farrell for the Indians. Rick would end up hitting a 3-run home run in the bottom of the 4th inning, and that came after Wes would hit a home run in the top of that frame in the Indians' 9-8 victory. And we stick with the Indians 5 years later. Bob Feller would make his major league debut in a relief appearance at 17 years old, throwing 1 inning, walking 2 batters. However, no hits, no runs allowed, no strikeouts, even though he has disputed that. He thinks there was 1 strikeout. We moved to 1952, and the Summer Olympic Games would open up in Helsinki, Finland. Back to the tour now. In 1952, Fausto Coppi would win his second and final Tour de France. 6 years later in 1958 at the tour, Charlie Gull would win his only title. We move back to Major League Baseball in 1960. San Francisco Giants pitcher Juan Marichal would make his debut in a fantastic game, a one-hitter against the Philadelphia Phillies. Marichal on the day, 9 innings pitched, 1 hit, 1 walk, 12 strikeouts in the victory. 4 years later, at the PGA Championship, Bobby Nichols, with a score of 9 under, would win his only major title, 3 strokes ahead of runners-up Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer. He would also lead this wire-to-wire. We have yet another first in MLB history. In 1966, in a game that featured the Astros and the Phillies, this would be the first Major League game to be played totally on artificial turf in the Astros' 8-2 victory at the Astrodome. We go back to the Tour de France in 1970. Defending champion Eddie Merckx would win his second of 4 straight Tour victories and his second of 5 overall. We move back to baseball in 1974. Indians pitcher Dick Bosman would no-hit the Oakland Athletics in a 4-0 victory. On the day, 9 innings pitched, 4 strikeouts, 0 walks. There was 1 error in the game in the top of the 4th inning. However, the error came by Bosman, so he can't blame his fielders for anything. 6 years later, we move up to 1980 at the 22nd Modern Olympic Games would open in Moscow, and the USA and 65 other countries, for a total of 66 countries, would boycott these games due to the Soviet-Afghan war going on. 1 year later, we go to the British Open. In 1981, Bill Rogers, with a score of 4 under, would win his only major title, 4 strokes ahead of runner-up Bernard Langer. Also in 81, at the Tour de France, Bernard Hinault would win his 3rd of 5 overall Tour victories. Now we move to boxing. In 1986, Tim Witherspoon would defeat Frank Bruno via technical knockout in 11 rounds to retain the heavyweight boxing title in his first defense. And we go back to golf. At the 1987 British Open, Nick Faldo, with a score of 5 under, would win his first major title of 6, 1 stroke ahead of runners-up Paul Azinger and Roger Davis. Back to baseball now. In 1991, Cal Ripken Jr. would play in his 1,500th consecutive game, making it 1 step closer to breaking Lou Gehrig's record. Move up 1 year to 1992, and we have the 30th edition of the Tennis Fed Cup, in which we saw Germany defeat Spain after Steffi Graf would defeat Arantxa Sanchez Vicario in the final matchup 6-4, 6-2 to claim the second title for Germany. Also in 92, at the British Open, Nick Faldo, with a score of 12 under, would win his 3rd Open title, 1 stroke ahead of John Cook, to win his 5th of 6 majors. 4 years later, in 1996, the 26th Olympic Games would open up in Atlanta, Georgia. 2 years after that, in 98, at the British Open, Mark O'Meara would win his 2nd major championship of the year and his 1st Open title, 2 strokes ahead of runner-up Brian Watts. Now we move up just over a decade to 2009, stay at the British Open. Stuart Sink, with a score of 2 under, would win his only major championship after a 4-hole playoff with Tom Watson to win by 6 strokes. We end today off in Major League Baseball in 2015. During the Reds' 5-3 loss to the Indians, Aroldis Chapman would record his 500th career strikeout, setting a Major League record for the fewest innings to reach the milestone. Chapman only needed 292 innings to do this, and the next closest was Craig Kimbrell, which needed 305 to get this record. So there you have it. That's what happened on this day in sports history. If I left anything out, I do apologize. If I mispronounced any names, I also apologize. But I will see everybody tomorrow for Nick Wire and the 10th inning. See ya.